Welcome to Author Nation Interviews. Today we're talking about writing about divisive topics and dealing with feedback you might receive about your book that you're not so happy about. Hi, I'm Melody Ann. I'm your host, and I'm here to show you how you can write successfully and deal with feedback that is really tough, because you can do it. Visit authornation.online to access a treasure trove of resources just for you. Now, whether you are ending your day, putting up your feet and relaxing, or whether you are on your way to work in the morning, sit back, settle in, and relax, because I'm going to introduce our guest. Our guest, Rhyss, is a former Army combat engineer, journalist, award-winning entrepreneur, and the author of 5 books, including The Woke Paradox. His latest work explores the evolution of wokeism and offers strategies for bridging societal divides. And we know we have a lot of those right now. A TEDx speaker, a PhD candidate in human-computer interaction, Rhyss has been recognized with Global Innovation Awards and as a finalist for the Australian Prime Minister's Veteran Entrepreneur of the Year. Known for making complex topics accessible, he speaks globally on ethics, tech, and innovation. Rhyss brings depth, humor, and curiosity to every conversation, making him a sought-after voice in nonfiction and beyond. Welcome, Rhyss. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. What time is it where you are?
It's just come 8 a.m.
8 a.m. So I'm finishing up my day. You're starting your day.
Certainly am. Just got back from a run, all ready and set for you.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. All right, let's talk a little bit about the woke paradox. I'm really curious because it explores the term woke, which has really become this cultural flashpoint. So what led you to write this book? And think about, how challenging it was to write about this complex topic, and maybe some advice you could give other nonfiction authors on their journey writing about divisive or complex topics.
Yeah, okay. Well, it is my second book on divisive topics. And until you actually reached out to invite me on the show, I hadn't really thought that was what I've done. But it kind of is to a T, because my mum was a community activist and then a politician. She raised us all to actually have a voice in debates in society if we felt the need and we had an informed opinion to weigh in. So with the woke paradox, I was just really confused and frustrated about how wokeism, which was, from an original African-American vernacular, was about being aware, being empathic, being curious, and looking after the people underserved in society, marginalized and almost forgotten. And I thought, woke in essence is a really good idea, and we should all put it into practice. But it's been so degenerated in the usage in the last few years, where it's been weaponized. There's all this political polemic, and it's just the left and the right out there arguing with each other about social change and how their party would do it. Whereas what it's done, and I've seen in Australia, I know it's even more divisive in the United States and the UK, is that people just end up giving up, and they just don't feel that they can actually be part of the debate. So there's no middle ground. In an interview I had yesterday, the guy was talking about in America, we don't have a middle class anymore. I said, you actually do, they just don't have a voice. Because at the current state of politics in the woke debate around the world, the loudest voice wins. So what I discuss in the book is that fundamentally both sides want the same thing. They want equality of opportunity, they want good education, healthcare, safe streets, people included in all walks of life, but they're just going about it in such different ways. So what I found most interesting in doing this book in the research was trying to find somebody else who was non-partisan out there to interview, to talk about what do you agree with the left, what do you agree with the right, what would you do, how have you been involved? What I found was so many people who wanted to toe the party line and get up on a soapbox and say, well, the right is right or the left is right, and then the language they used was almost like a press release. I kept coming across more and more people from either side of the divide who kept using the same sound bites and the same words in the same context. But then you take that word and you use it on the other side, and it meant different things. I thought, this is ridiculous, because how am I, as a person who does believe in things like equality of opportunity and everything else, with my middle class white privilege, and I actually participate in a meaningful way rather than just flag or my Facebook profile photo to have, I'm woke as my image. So I wrote a book about it, and so it took 2 years of actually chasing people down all around the world. And I can't believe, if you go onto Amazon and you type in woke, it's a search term looking for books. All of the books choose one side or the other. Nobody's decided to say, in the middle, this is what you can do. This is the freedom and the power that you have. Much like, you step on a piece of Lego at 2 o'clock in the morning, that tiny one piece of Lego is going to ruin your day. But it's amazing how impactful one small person can be. And what I've seen in the past few weeks since the book has come out is a couple of people who have interviewed me on podcasts or radio have put it up on their websites or on their social channels, and it's sparked debate. And what they're saying is, ostensibly by sharing the interview that they did with me, is I'm for the middle. I want what everybody wants. I want the equality and everything else. I don't want to get caught up in all the BS and all the drama and the weaponized language. I don't want to cancel people for no reason. I think everyone should have an opinion and should be able to express it, but also be held accountable for it. It's been great to see that I'm getting emails from the weirdest places all around the world where people are coming across the book because they said it's long overdue. So my lesson then to fellow writers of nonfiction, creative nonfiction specifically, is you're working with fact, and you've got to be really, really careful about how you bring together those facts to tell your story. And it's the same as me as a PhD candidate right now. I can go and find a whole heap of evidence to suggest one thing, but at the same time, go and find a whole heap of evidence to suggest the counter argument. So you really have to be careful when you want to tell a story and you devote so much of your life to writing something that you find the right content that actually really does tell the story honestly without bias. Because it's all about the intent, right? The writers, we have this incredible privilege to use, in your case, less words, in my case, lots of words, to actually change the world, to shape the world that we live in. So you have to be really, really careful because it's your reputation. But the biggest thing is that a book is legacy. That's going to outlast you, and it's going to be used and referred to in different ways. And so if you're not responsible in actually shaping that piece of content, that piece of social criticism almost, then it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that coming back to bite you, because a lot of people, and you talked about the middle class being silenced. I may be wrong, but I sometimes get the sense that it's difficult to speak up, because if you say something that somebody else disagrees with, you get backlash, you get, as you say, canceled, this whole cancel culture. And so how do you approach writing about something that could get you a lot of backlash? How do you stay resilient in that? How do you persist through criticisms or setbacks?
I think the best answer to this, and this only came to me earlier this week in a podcast interview with the man I was referring to just before we went on air. Viktor Frankl, who was the psychologist that was in the death camps during World War II, he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And much like Simon Sinek talks about finding your why, Viktor Frankl said you can endure almost anything if you have a why, a reason to live, someone to love, a mission to fulfill. So when you're in the trenches and you're defending your book, or at least discussing it, I don't think you should ever have to defend your work. You should explain it, not ask or give excuses, not ask for forgiveness. Your job as a writer, an author, is to create the best piece at the time that you can create to get your message out there, whatever it might be, whether it's divisive or not. And when you're in the fray of it, so my first book was about violence around the world, and I talked about everything from honor killings, euthanasia, ritual murder, serial killers, whatever. And I just want to put a human face to these stories. As an ex-combat soldier, I wanted to understand if we're ever allowed to kill. And so in writers' festivals, I actually have had death threats. I've had to have police called and things like that. I had to hide all my social media, change my numbers. But I never backed down from the fact that the book was a really important book that had to be written, and I'm glad I wrote it. I feel the same here now. So I've been on 2 podcasts in the last 2 weeks where they've been very, very partisan and decided to go against me, and I just stay cool and calm and just say, look, it's, by all means, I respect your opinion. It's an attitude of appreciative inquiry. Your opinion is as true to you as mine is to me, and I promise you're not going to sway me because this is very well researched. It makes sense when you read it, And it's a very different view of the woke debate that actually says we should be breathing air back into the woke debate, taking out all the toxic mess and the empty language and the weaponized language, and just getting it back to basics of giving people equality, letting people know they're seen, letting them know that people like me sitting in my nice, comfortable, air-conditioned office and everything else do give a damn about marginalized and communities. So, yeah, I think it's resilience for authors really means you have to lock into what is your purpose and what is your mission as an author with your tome that you have written, and hold true to that. And don't let anyone tell you any different. Unless they come up with something that substantially you didn't know, the world didn't know, and then someone can sway you. Don't be so inflexible that you can't actually expand your views over time. This book did for me dramatically, but yeah, hold true to the reason you wrote it. And so when someone's giving you all of their attitude, just smile and thank them for their opinion, and keep going about what you're doing. Fight the good fight.
Yeah, thank you. If you'd like to learn more about Chris, you can find him at chrisrhyss.co. That's CHRISRHYSS.co. And also, Chris, this is my next question. So you say, just stay calm, stick to your guns. But a lot of people will tell you, but I'm sitting there and somebody says something inflammatory to me, and my whole body just goes up in flames. And it's like, how do I not react? That's my question. How do you remain calm talking about your books when it's so, obviously you've spent so much time writing, it must be personal, it's important to you. There's, people that you've, in some way like attacking you. Where do you find that groundedness, that centeredness to remain calm?
I always come back to, I write a book, and then you know how you write a book, then you have to write the cover, jacket, content for it, the back cover. How do you describe this book? What is the goal of this book? And when emotions get into these debates, and they frequently do at writers' festivals and readings and things like that, that there's two things you need to be aware of. One is staying on script. So don't get dragged into impassioned debates. When people use emotion and start to attack you, that usually means they're coming from a place of fear or weakness. So you might be shaking their tree so much, they're being defensive without even realizing it sometimes. So you need to be gentle with big topics about how you say to people, look, you believe this. What I'm saying is maybe you should just open up the borders and believe that. Don't take them to there, just baby steps. So I find when people get really emotional, I sit back, I slow down the way I talk. I reflect back to them what they're saying, as in, like, so I'm hearing you quite emotional about this subject. I hear this is the point of debate. I stand and I believe this, you believe that. Where do you want to go from here? And to have that presence of mind can be really unsettling for some people. And then what you'll see is two things will happen. One is that they'll kind of wind back a bit and then start to have a bit more open discussion. Or second, they'll attack you personally because they're not getting through on their intellectual level and they're not getting their point across. So they start to say, like, something about your background. What would you know? You were just a soldier, or something like that. And as soon as it becomes personal, you've already won. Not that it should be a contest of winning and losing, but as soon as they start to make it personal, not about the message and about the intent, then you know that they don't have anything left in their armory.
Yeah. Those were some great strategies, tactics. But what I really, really loved about your answer was, when somebody attacks you personally, look at them and think, wow, they must be scared or, uncertain, or, there's something going on with, I feel for this person. There's something wrong there. And just like turning that, instead of responding with anger and fear, recognizing their dilemma and showing some, in some ways you're showing an empathy for that. Yeah, I hear that you're really scared. I love that answer. I think that's incredibly powerful, just to reframe how you see people. So I want to talk about feedback. We're talking about, don't listen to this kind of negative, like let go of the cruelness that people can throw at you. But what about real feedback, whether it's positive or negative? A lot of people, their book goes out on Amazon, and I haven't read all the reviews on your latest book, but I'm guessing some people don't like it because it's not in agreement with what they are. So how do you determine what feedback you're going to take and what feedback you're going to reject without flavoring it with your own bias? Does that make sense, that question?
Absolutely. It's almost back to the same answer I give about when somebody's giving you feedback in real time. I separate the message from the person and the delivery. So if they've got something to say about, is it factually incorrect, the way that I've written something, that's the first piece of feedback I'll always take on board. So if somebody corrects me and they can back that up, absolutely, I change on the spot. If it's personal feedback and they want to vent because they're angry with the world and I've destabilized them, then I take that on the chin as well too, because that's the intent of the book. For the middle America and the people like yourself and myself who are willing to talk about these topics, it's not quite as impassioned a debate because we're kind of already there and we're trying to work out. We pick up a book like this because we're looking to affect change and to feel like we'd be part of something that has been shown to so many people. It's like, no, this is for the government to handle. You guys just sit back. We got this. And that's not the case. This is a debate, much like Rosa Parks sitting on a bus and not getting up. This is the current version of that. And the way that she became this linchpin of the civil rights movement, every single person out there with social media channels who shares this interview, shares their review of the book for good or bad, is participating in some sense around change. So some people don't want change, and I understand that. I mean, when I was younger, I liked my life being really simple in the military. I get out now and I find inherently as I get older, like my TED talk, the uncomfortable truth between right and wrong was my TED talk, because there's a lot of grey in the world. You know, my government gave me a gun at the age of 17 and said, at some stage we might cash in this blank check you wrote for your life to serve your country. And I'm fortunate just to serve as a peacekeeper. But you know, we have these responsibilities, right? And I think that if somebody comes up to me and just says, look, I didn't like it and here's why, and they can say it really rationally, that's really useful for me as well too. And that really does guide interviews like this as well, where I kind of slow down and I want to see the pace you're coming at this, how much energy are you investing in this interview? Is there something you want to get off your chest, which I've found quite a lot in the past couple of weeks? But I always thank people. I've had 2 Amazon reviews where people have just said, I'm going to put this up. They've emailed me through my website and I said, put it up. You know, that you don't like it and you disagree. And it's hate language in your book. That's fantastic. Put it up. Because I believe in free speech. People being held accountable for it, including myself. You don't like what I wrote, tell me why. And if it's rational, I'll celebrate that as much as I celebrate how happy I am with the book.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. So one thing I'm curious about in the woke paradox, you talk about bridging divides. So how, can you talk a little bit about this and how bridging divides, how you as a nonfiction author are working towards bridging divides through your writing?
Yeah, it's actually, that was my original goal with this whole project, was working out a framework for how we can bring people to the table from different sides to actually discuss this without all of the passion, to take a big rational step back, to agree on common ground. So, and that was what my mum did as a politician in the local area where I grew up, was that she'd have both parties coming in and actually vying for her vote, which would sway a whole region and be offering better schools, better roads, whatever it might be, tax cuts. And she'd end up getting them both at the table, both bringing something, not quite as much as they originally offered, but everyone kind of getting a middle ground. And I really respected that. And in doing this book, all the research and the background on it, I would sit there and I'd go and see someone on the right. And the next thing I do is go and see someone on the left, armed with what I've just heard over there, knowing full well what I'm going to hear over here, and then be able to reflect some of what I heard on the right, the essence of it, which was something like looking after safe societies and school education. As soon as the moment they say on the left, education and safer streets is where we're at, it's like, well, that's interesting because the right agrees. And you'd see their faces sometimes because they'd be really thrown, because people get so bought into their sides that they choose. And this is the problem with the two-party system. If someone says yes on the left, you've got to say no on the right, because that's how two-party politics works. And that's not how it works. It is to actually say, look, so you care about schools, you care about schools, you care about crime, you care about crime, you care about opportunity, you care about opportunity. Let's start there. Not just the people who are with our elected officials, but everything from the people on the streets who are marginalised, people like you and I in the middle who are just like, well, what can we do? Point us in the right direction. Arm us with information, set us free. So that's, I think, divides is you need to understand common ground first before you can actually start to get people to start bridging gaps. And as soon as you're clear on that and you've got confirmation from both sides that this is true, that's where it gets really exciting and it moves really fast.
Yeah, that was really useful. Thank you so much, Chris. So where can we learn more about you and where can we find your books?
So books are on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. For the most part, I do everything through Amazon. It's a lot easier. But yeah, chrisrhyss.co is my website. It's got links to all my 5 books and I have a blog up there. And if anyone has questions, reach out. There's a contact form on the website and always happy to discuss this stuff as always.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you very much for coming. It's been fabulous to have you. I've really enjoyed, listening to your ideas. You've given our audience some really good advice today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Author Nation Interviews. I hope this conversation has provided you with some strength, some resilience, some ideas on how to really write about your way you want to change the world without as much fear of backlash and negative feedback, because we're all going to get it. Not everyone likes me. Not everyone likes Chris. Not everyone likes you. And that's just the way it is. Don't forget to visit authornation.online for a wealth of resources designed to support your journey as a nonfiction author. And of course, we greatly appreciate your feedback. If you have enjoyed this episode today, and I know you have, consider leaving a comment, leaving a review, and don't forget to share it with someone who you know is writing a book that might get some backlash, who really needs to hear this. And your participation helps us continue delivering insights and tools that you need to succeed. So keep writing, keep creating, and continue sharing your unique stories with the world.